something. I read about that. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. Welcome to our spring edition of the Missoula County Heritage Roundtable. We appreciate you all making it today. It looks like a smallish group. A number of folks had conflicts agenda-wise, but welcome to all of you who are in attendance. So for those of you who might be new to these gatherings, Missoula County pulled together the Heritage Roundtable a few years ago in hopes of filling a gap in our community communication-wise as it relates to historic preservation and all issues heritage related. And so that was the genesis of this, and we have kept this going. Usually meet a couple times a year, and it's an opportunity for those of us in the community and any of you in the community, countywide. Technical difficulties. Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties. Can all of you out there hear me still?
Yeah.
You still can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
We will go without the microphone. So anyway, it's an opportunity for all of you in the community working in the world of heritage, historic preservation, interpretation to share what you are working on in your respective organization or circle of influence. So we will begin with just a quick round of introductions. If you wouldn't mind just stating your name and what organization or affiliation you have. And we have a number of items that we've identified on the agenda for specific presenters, but then we'll have an opportunity for everyone, whether you're on the agenda or not, to share a little bit about what's going on in your world. So let's see, we'll start here in the Missoula Public Library meeting room, which, by the way, next time, if you guys can make it, it's a beautiful view here. So we would love to have you in person. Let's begin with Chet Krauser.
Yeah, just for introductions.
Yeah, just who you are and what's your job title?
Yes. So I'm Chet Krauser, Chief Lands and Communities Officer for the county, and have been involved previously with CAPS and some of the, in fact, we'll talk a little bit in a second, Juniper and I, about one of the items we've been working on and probably is familiar to this group. But we have kind of gone through a reorg, hence the new title, if that's new to some of you. And currently Lands and Communities contains all of planning, parks, trails, open lands. We'll have some additional work around recreation, including places like the fairgrounds and bringing that all together, as well as our grants and community programs. And then also the new ecology and extension department, which includes the new facility at the fairgrounds and the butterfly house. So we've got a lot of changes afoot, but stay pretty closely connected with those various departments and divisions I mentioned with a lot of the heritage conversations in the community as well.
Matt Watsonizer, I'm the Executive Director with the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula.
And Dave Strohmeyer, Missoula County Commissioner.
Dave Frederickson, Director of the Public History Program at the University of Montana.
Sharon Gressel, Board Member for the Upper Swan Valley Historical Society.
Sally Thompson, anthropologist.
Okay, Kyla, would you like to name the folks off online?
Sure. Online, we have Juniper Davis, Sierra Farmer, Lisa Tate, Justin Moschel, and Thompson Smith.
Okay, would each of you just like to, in the order that Kyla read your names, just say who you're with?
Sure, I'll go first. Hi, everybody. Juniper Davis. I work for Missoula County. I'm the
Juniper, we
manager.
can't hear you.
Oh, I have my mic turned.
It doesn't look like you're muted, but we can't hear you.
I can hear you, Juniper.
Yeah, audio problems. Let's go on.
I can
hi, Violet.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
You can hear Juniper. Okay. We can hear Juniper in the call, so that's,
Okay, that's
that's
not.
odd.
That's weird because we were working
You know,
earlier. Hold on.
I think they
Uh,
can maybe hear
Slight
us on the
intermission,
Zoom, but
technical
not.
difficulties. We can't hear any of you out there. You can see your lips moving.
That's Microsoft Teams.
But she knows what she's doing.
Me too.
Could you test the mic, please?
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you, Juniper. You're just kind of quiet. So let me just turn the volume up.
Oh, this is working again. That's why it was. I'm gonna get ready early.
Okay, I think we should have audio.
Okay, Juniper, try again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Stay
Is it
with
loud
us.
enough?
We can barely hear you in the room.
Oh, shoot.
There, that's better.
Oh, there we go. Excellent.
Okay, okay, hi. Good, we're good?
Yeah, we're good. Go ahead, Juniper. Introduce yourself, please.
Great. Hi, everybody. Juniper Davis. I work for Missoula County and I'm the manager of Parks, Trails and Open Lands. Good to see you all.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Sierra Farmer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm the Trust Lands Program Manager for the Montana DNRC here in Missoula. So I'm cover the southwestern part of the state, which includes Missoula County. Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't recall the order off the top of my head, but this is Lisa Tate, and I'm with the National Museum of Forest Service History, and we are getting ready to start construction on the National Conservation Legacy Center here in Missoula.
Thank you, Lisa. How about, let's see, Thompson.
Am I unmuted? I am.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Thompson Smith. I'm historian and ethnogeographer for the Sedlish-Cutley-Spec Culture Committee, which is a department of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes.
Thank you, Thompson. Justin.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Moschel. I'm the Heritage Program Manager on the Lolo National Forest since this last September.
Welcome, Justin. Let's see, Sydney.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not being rude. I just cannot use my camera at work. My name is Sydney Bacon. I am an archaeologist on the Lolo National Forest, and I've never attended one of these meetings and figured it was about time.
Absolutely, you're most welcome. Good to have you with us. And Violet.
Hey, everybody. My name is Violet Plummer. I'm an administrative assistant in the Missoula County Commissioner's Office, just sitting in today. So thanks.
Is there anyone else online who I missed? And we also have at the control panel here in the library, Kyla Leonards. Hi, Kyla.
Hi, yep, Kyla Leonard's administrative assistant for the commissioner's office. Kind of just helping facilitate any tech issues we might have during this meeting.
Excellent, of which we have a few already, but we've navigated them. So thanks everyone for those quick introductions. And let's kick things off. We're going to take the agenda in a slightly different order than what you see. We're going to begin with Lisa Tate, Executive Director of the National Museum of Forest Service History, to bring us up to speed on what is happening out there, all the exciting things happening with planning a new facility. Lisa.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for adjusting the agenda for me. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. It's a lovely day to be out and about. We have some really exciting things happening at the museum. For those of you that are unaware, we have a 31-acre campus that is 1 mile west of the Missoula Airport. And we are not the Forest Service, but we do partner very closely with the agency on all of our various projects. And the biggest project, of course, that we have coming is the National Conservation Legacy Center. This is a national destination point for Missoula. So we think that this is going to
stay with us, everyone. We've lost our connection.
There we go.
Lisa, you're back with us. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hopefully this
Okay.
doesn't reset every like 45 seconds here, so.
Well, we've been working very hard on a capital campaign to build a new world-class museum, which focuses on America's conservation history to bring here to Missoula, and we're getting very close to finalizing our campaign. We actually had completed our campaign, but unfortunately, construction costs really increased for us to the point where we had to go back and raise additional funds, and we are doing that, and we are planning to start construction in October of this year and have a groundbreaking. So even though we're still raising money, that is our target goal. The construction timeline is 16 to 18 months, and so we would be opening in the latter part of 2025. And in addition to that, we have our campus that is open Memorial Day through Labor Day. So we're getting ready to open that for the summer, and I would encourage all of you to come out and visit us. The other big news that we have, fingers crossed, we have been trying now for actually a couple of years to move P2V aerial tanker, which has been restored and donated by Neptune Aviation, to our campus as an outdoor exhibit and teaching tool to learn about aerial firefighting and the history of aerial firefighting. And that is actually supposed to happen, again, fingers crossed and weather dependent, on Wednesday of this week. So hopefully we'll have a lot of media attention on bringing that extraordinary plane to our campus. But I'm happy to answer any questions for anyone. If you haven't seen the Conservation Legacy Center, or if you want to learn more about it, we have great information on our website, forestservicemuseum.org.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lisa. Any questions from anyone online or in the room here for Lisa? Okay. Well, we look forward to the groundbreaking out there.
You'll all be invited. Come and cut the ribbon with us.
Excellent.
And put the shovels in the ground.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. All right, going back to the order of our agenda, let's hear what's happening now at the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula.
Thanks, Dave. Just a couple things, couple quick updates on our end. Our barracks project, which is to fully restore and reconstruct two original ADC barracks that were used during the internment era at Fort Missoula. And Sarah, I'm glad to see you online, because the one barrack is the one we got from the DNRC on Spurgeon. You probably remember it as the old maintenance shop, and now you guys have a beautiful new maintenance shop, and we're getting ready to restore that building. So super excited. We are getting ready to release an RFP on that. It should happen very soon. And then that'll be open for contractors to bid for about 3 weeks. And we're hopeful, this will all depend on the schedule of the contractors, that work on that may begin as early as the end of June. So we're definitely excited to move forward on that. For those of you who aren't familiar with the project, once it's complete, one of the barrack buildings, actually the DNRC barrack, will be fully restored inside and out to create an immersive space that allows visitors to really better understand the living conditions of both the Italians and the Japanese that were held at Fort Missoula during World War II. The second building will be a reconstruction. We will be using a template from what was one of the barracks that was moved to the fairgrounds. We're going to do a full reconstruction of that building. And it'll actually be created in a way that there's an envelope on the inside of the building for a collection storage facility, which will be fully climate controlled. It'll be essentially a state-of-the-art collection storage facility. As our collection has grown now beyond 50,000 objects, we are in sore need of great collection space. So it's going to help us with that need as well too. Two other quick things, or a couple other quick things. I wanted to mention, we do have a new name for one of our areas at Fort Missoula. What was formerly known as the Forestry Interpretive Area is now going to be called the Montana Historic Equipment Area. As the years have passed, that has essentially kind of shifted from being just about forestry. We now have folks that interpret mining history, antique steam engines, all those kind of things. So in addition to the new name, which better reflects kind of the partnership that is all the groups that are our partners out there, we've also added, or I should say, one of our volunteers has added about 24 new interpretive signs. And one of the challenges we've had in the past is that some folks that aren't in the know when it comes to antique logging equipment tend to look out there and just see a lot of essentially rusty equipment. But a lot of the pieces out there are under active restoration. In addition to that, those pieces are fairly unique. Many where there's less than 100 left in the world. So we're really excited to have additional interpretation out there and kind of rebrand that area. So that will be coming this summer.
What's the name again, man?
The Montana Historic Equipment Area. So that was come up with by our volunteers that all of our different partner groups we work with out there. Two other last quick notes. 4th of July celebration is on for Fort Missoula as always. Should be the full event. We've got multiple bands, food trucks, all of our historic buildings open, all sorts of demonstrations over in that new Montana Historic Equipment Area. It should be the full celebration that the community loves to come out for. So we're excited about that. After a couple of years of COVID, and last year we finally got it back to fairly normal, and this year we expect to be a fully normal year for us. Last thing I will mention, which may be of interest to some of the folks here in the room and on the line, we have opened our Preserving Missoula County's History Grant Program. This is a program that's funded through the public dollars that the Historical Museum of Fort Missoula receives through our levy that was passed in 2003. Annually, we make $10,000 available to 501c3 nonprofits in Missoula County that are doing work around history. It's a pretty wide open qualification. Essentially, if you meet our mission, which is preserving Missoula County's history for the education and enjoyment of the public, you are eligible for a grant. So we limit it to a max of $5,000 per project, but there's 10,000 total to give away. It's probably, if somebody who's written some grants, it's probably the easiest grant application you're ever going to do. It's about 1.5 pages. So if anybody has projects that may fit for that and you're a 501c3, the deadline is June 15th. Feel free to reach out to me via email or phone, and I'm happy to get you a copy of the application for that. It's also available on our website, which is fortmissoulamuseum.org. That's it from our end, Dave.
Hey, thanks, Matt, for that. Appreciate it. Any comments, questions for Matt?
Matt, this is Lisa. I would just like to say that as you're working on your new repository project, we're kind of doing the same thing right now with the repository that will be in the National Conservation Legacy Center, and it would be awesome to collaborate with you. Maybe we can learn from each other's project on the best way to go about our individual repositories.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate that. Okay, anything else for Matt? All right, let's jump back up to an update on the Lalonde Ranch. Chet or Juniper?
Yeah, Juniper, I don't know, I'll offer you an opportunity to start if you'd like, or I can kick it off here in the room. It's up to you.
Honestly, either way, maybe since you're in the room, you kick it off, but I'm happy to tag team it.
Sure.
And for folks online, can you hear better with the microphone or without? Does it make any difference?
About the same.
About the same. Okay, go ahead.
I don't see a difference.
Either way.
Right. Well, Lalonde has been a point of topic for a number of these meetings. And so probably most of you are familiar with some of the things that have been going on out there. But to just give a very quick background, gosh, I think when I first came, Dave had a conversation with me about Lalonde, maybe even before I started, Dave. I think there was a trip of staff headed out to the Lalonde Ranch to look at the building. And we've been working since then to try to continue the historic preservation and kind of recognize the significance of the heritage component out there. So we've had a number of focus groups. Ultimately, the commission had passed a resolution to just sort of charge the county and our department at the time in trying to pursue some additional work out there. And there's been a number of folks even in this meeting that have joined in some of those meetings and discussions and trying to chart a course for doing just that. It's exciting to announce, or at least give you an update, maybe some of you already know this, that we are wrapping up some work that's been ongoing out at the historic farmhouse. And that is to both upgrade some of the building itself in terms of the historic character, but also to bring that up to a state where we could work with a partner and actually using that space for some of their office and their function. So we are currently partnering with CFAC, the Community Food and Agriculture Coalition, to be tenants in that space, but also partners on site as well, so that we, moving forward, will have the ability to have some of the lease payments from them being a tenant, help offset some of the costs that we put into the building itself, but also into the future, working with them on some public engagement opportunities. Obviously, having a presence on site will help immensely. So we're excited to see what that looks like, and I can let Juniper talk about that more in a second. The other really exciting thing to share is that we have a celebration event that will be happening today. So hopefully some of you have heard about this earlier than today. It'll be this afternoon. We've got a handful of folks that'll be on site to speak to mostly of what I just described, kind of this transition into using the site, and in the future, looking forward to continued engagement. And that's slated to happen right about 4. Commissioner Strohmeyer, we've got Jordan Hess, Bonnie Buckingham with CFAC, Paul Filicetti, who I think, did I see him earlier and maybe he's not there? And then Stacy Haynes, who's been doing the work out there. So it should be kind of a cool opportunity. And if you haven't had a chance to see the house and want to get a peek at it, feel free to come out and join us.
And just so folks know, to orient you, this is the county property that you may not realize is a county property, just off Airway Boulevard. So if you exit I-90, as if you're going to the airport, exit to the south, Airway Boulevard. And it's the kind of cool historic farmstead that you might have seen next to the interstate and wondered, what is that? Well, that is a county-owned property. It's right next to Dino's gas station casino, across the street from Big Sky Brewing, and it's on Harrier Boulevard, Harrier Way, 4 p.m. Juniper.
Yeah, no, Chet and Dave, you covered pretty much all of my talking points. I guess I would just chime in to emphasize how excited we are to be partnering with CFAC. The county, led largely by Commissioner Strohmeyer and partners that are at this table and others in the community, have been trying to find a real, like, enriching future that we can provide through this site. Can you hear me? I see Chet getting up. I'm wondering if he's doing some tech troubleshooting.
He's just letting someone in.
Oh, okay. And even though we knew that there was a real strong desire to see some increased engagement here, we were just having a hard time figuring out what that could look like. And when this opportunity came up with CFAC, it just started to coalesce. The synergy with the county working with CFAC specifically at this site, just like, it just felt like everything kind of fell into place. Because this site itself, excuse me, has such a strong heritage within the valley for ranching and farming, and it still has a lot of its original site integrity. And here we have this nonprofit that itself is really focused on our community's local agriculture and teaching new farmers and making food accessible. And they want to partner with us at this site. It's just so awesome. So the types of things that they're thinking about doing in cooperation with the county might be things like we might have interpretive signs and a walking path, maybe even provide for periodic site tours. CFAC is really interested in the possibility, at least, of doing some demonstration gardens or having educational events, maybe cultivating an orchard. I mean, really, the ideas are kind of endless. One of the fun ones might be one day utilizing the kind of ranch house to be a local market for selling value-added farm products, and being able to bring people into the old ranch house. So anyways, stay tuned. I think in the next year, maybe 2, we'll maybe just be getting our feet underneath ourselves, getting CFAC moved in and kind of making some plans for the future. But I would guess that in the next 2 years and beyond, you'll start to see more engagement out at that site and more opportunities to come out and either attend an event there or an educational activity around farming practices that perhaps CFAC might be putting on, or who knows what else. But we're really excited about it. And hope folks can come to the celebration this afternoon.
Thanks, Juniper. And I'll just add that in the world of historic preservation, where the story is so often one of attrition, losing things that the community values, this is a rare bright spot in that this location's been on Preserve Historic Missoula's most endangered list for years. And so here's an example where, with the willingness to invest a little bit of money and have the political will to do so, we're actually restoring a site, and it's going to tell the story of agricultural history in the Missoula Valley. Hopefully, Thompson, I see you out there at some point. We'll probably want to be talking about how to better situate that history into the larger and deeper history of Aboriginal use of this valley in western Montana. But in any event, exciting event today, 4 p.m. at the Lalonde Ranch. Come on out if you can. Any questions on this? And we are fortunate enough to have Kent Watson drop in here. Kent has done a fair amount of work out there at the Lalonde Ranch in past years. So thank you, Kent, for, I guess, basically priming the pump on all the work that got us to where we are today.
It was a very small part of a bigger contract for the whole development part, but I was glad to be able to work on late 90s.
Okay, these things take time sometimes. Any other questions, comments?
This is Lisa. I would just mention that prior to moving home to Missoula, I had in my previous position worked on a project that was a children's farm to educate kids on the importance of heritage species of both animals and plants. And we had some really great exhibits on like how to grow your own pizza and things like that. And I would be happy, if you think it would be of any benefit to you, to share our materials from that project. Maybe it would be of interest to you, or you may like maybe it would generate some ideas, but happy to share that if you think it would be something you'd like to see.
That would be awesome, Lisa. Yeah, we those are the kinds of things we're looking forward to in the future. So exactly when we would get to that point, I'm not entirely sure, but to have that information would be great.
Great. I'll send it on your way.
Perfect.
And also, Lisa and Matt in particular, be thinking about ways in which this site can be maybe a portal into other attractions, such as both of your museums here in the Missoula Valley, because this is a pretty convenient jump off spot for folks, either coming into Missoula via the airport or just bouncing off the interstate and wanting to check out this particular interpretive site. And to the extent that we can help inform folks what else they might avail themselves of in the Missoula Valley, so much the better. Okay, we will move on. The COVID-19 documentation project. Leif Fredrickson from the University of Montana's History Department will fill us in on what this is and where we are with this right now. And I know it's starting to, for many of us, become a distant memory or a bad dream, COVID-19, but this is a way to help for future generations, I think, talk about the experience we've been through here in Missoula County, and I think be a valuable resource for how you document significant regional and nationally significant events. Leif.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so I teach at the university, but I was also the coordinator for the Missoula County COVID-19 documentation project. So I'll just give you a little background on that project and let you know where we're at and where we might be headed. So this started, I mean, almost immediately in the early pandemic in early 2020. It was initiated by Dave Strohmeyer, people at the county, and other local organizations and individuals who, recognized that this was going to be a really historically important event. And there was a a desire and a hope to sort of archive and document that event. So we wanted to create a community archive that would bring together collections that would be available to our community to collect documents and interviews that would be useful to help us understand what we went through and maybe deal with that sort of a pandemic or other crises in the future. And also to think, early on, we started thinking about how that this was, as we were working through this ourselves, the idea that this might be an opportunity to think about how to better document these sorts of crises themselves. So it started off as a volunteer effort and was a volunteer effort for the first year. We met regularly, tried to collect some materials, but it became clear that we needed funding to do that in a more consistent way. And so again, Dave Strohmeyer and the county were able to secure funding through the CARES Act grant in 2021 that funded us paying for software called Preservica that would allow us to archive and organize materials that we collected and then make those materials available to the public. And then also to coordinate the project and to conduct 20 oral histories and transcribe them and so on. So that was the grant funded project. We started that in late 2021 and it just sort of wrapped that up in the last couple months. So we were able, we did a lot of outreach to local organizations and institutions to try to see if they would be willing to donate materials, to see what organizations had. We completed those 20 oral histories and got that website up, that Preservica site up. And so now there's, we were able to collect some, materials from local organizations and do those interviews, and they're all available online for the public. And we also completed a 45-page report that sort of discusses this whole project that we did and reflects on, some of the issues that we had, some of the ways in which communities or local governments or so on might approach this sort of problem of trying to document in the midst of a crisis going forward. So I think we've created a tangible archive. It is digital, but an archive that people can see and go look at and so on. And the hope is that while we've gotten a lot of materials, that will also sort of be a seed for further collection that other organizations, obviously in the midst of a pandemic, it's hard for organizations to devote time to collecting resources to send to us. And so the hope is that in the future, as we have this tangible archive, we can point to that organizations will continue to contribute to it. And that we have collected materials that will be useful for thinking about these sorts of crises going forward, and that we've been able to sort of reflect on the project itself, this whole issue of collecting during a pandemic. And so going forward, the hope is that we might be able to both expand our collection, get further funding to do more oral histories, to do more collections, but perhaps also to develop a toolkit that we could then help other communities document during a crisis, sort of a workshop or reports or that sort of thing that other communities or local governments could use going forward. And I think this is a thing that's great for Missoula, and I think it would be great regardless of what other communities did. But I can say, periodically we've sort of surveyed what other communities were doing, other institutions were doing in terms of documenting COVID, and lots of places had various projects in place, but very few of them had the sort of for the size of our community, had the sort of resources devoted to this. A lot of them were self-submission systems, which are very self-selective in terms of what people actually donate. And we were able to spend the money to go out, reach out to organizations and institutions to collect things, to do oral histories and so on. And I just went and presented on our project at the National Council on Public History, where I was on a panel with some other people, including a couple of historians who have sort of tried to take a broad overview of what all the other sorts of communities have done. And I can say that our project is quite, if not unique, it's one of the strongest in terms of the amount of resources and what we were able to accomplish in that period of time. So we're looking forward to doing more with it, to meet more and so on, to see exactly what we want to do. But all in there, and of course, several people here have been involved in this project, so they're welcome to add anything that I'm sure I've left some things out, but also happy to answer any questions about it.
Like, how were you received at the National Council on Public History?
It was great. We had a great attendance for our panel. Lots of really engaging questions. So it was really nice.
Any questions or comments from folks on the COVID-19 documentation project? Well, one thing I will note, and it's pretty obvious, but this was a great partnership from multiple entities across the county, including folks involved in, in the Swan Valley, some of our local historical societies here in Missoula County, the Historical Museum of Fort Missoula, and the city of Missoula, among others. I will say that just a little bit more by way of background, when we kicked this thing off a few years ago, it was in the context of a situation that none of us knew exactly where this would go by way of the pandemic. But one thing that we did, I think, understand as a group was that there's a role for those involved in the world of history in the moment, in real time, that extended beyond just trying to figure out how do you run a museum during a shutdown due to a public health emergency. There's a greater role for public historians, archivists than just that. It's also how can we document in real time what's going on to make the lives of others decades or centuries into the future a whole lot easier when they're trying to understand what happened in the past. Because I think we were keenly aware of the challenges associated with understanding what happened during the 1918 flu pandemic, because folks may not have necessarily been thinking in terms of, we need to document this for future generations. Well, we had that opportunity right now. Any other questions, comments? We will eagerly await to see whether our nomination for a National Association of Counties Achievement Award comes to fruition here. Okay, fingers crossed. Thank you, Lisa. All right, so we've got a number of folks joining us today that probably have updates, even though we didn't necessarily list you on the agenda. So why don't we just do a round robin here in the true spirit of a round table and begin with Thompson Smith. Thompson, anything that you'd like to share that the Culture Committee is working on?
Good morning again. Thanks, Dave, and thanks again for holding this roundtable. It's such an amazing thing, and just to hear the rich array of projects going on, it's just impressive and humbling to just be a part of the group. So in terms of our updates, I think I'll just keep it super short and just mention something that happened a couple weeks ago when we had the dedication of the Grant Creek signs, a project long in the works, another wonderful partnership that's enabled us to continue our long efforts to get Indigenous voices and stories out into our shared public spaces, and voices and stories that really haven't been out there previously very much anyway. Certainly for the Sedlish or Salish and Kalispel or Pend Oreille people. And so We worked with Bert Lindler and the awesome Grant Creek Trails Association for a long time, and our our late director, Tony Incashola Sr., initiated that and or initiated our involvement in it. So really, for Sadie Pion, the new director, and I, taking part in the dedication was in large part remembering Tony's role in that. So if you go along the Grant Creek pedestrian trail, you'll be able to find two fabulous signs along there, thanks to this joint effort. And one of them is a slightly different version of our Missoula place name sign, which is already up in several locations. The earliest was the one we were invited to contribute at the Fort Missoula Regional Park, another great partnership project. The other sign is something that I'm willing to bet a very tiny percentage of Missoulians are aware of, which is the origins of the English place name Missoula. And there have been many, in our opinion, erroneous accountings of the origins of that name kicked out there. Not to blame anyone, but unless you're neck deep in this stuff for a really long time, it's super hard to sort through these things. And so what's on the sign is the story of a woman named Julia Grant Higgins, married to Christopher Higgins. One of the two non-Indians recognized as founders of the city of Missoula, along with Frank Worden. And Julia was a quarter Kalispel, upper Kalispel or Pend Oreille, and a fluent speaker of the language. And her father was Richard Grant, who was a Hudson Bay Company fur trader. She was born at Fort Hall when he was the chief factor there. Her mother was named Helen. She was half Kalispel and raised her daughter in the language. And Helen's mother was given the English name somehow of Peggy or Margaret, and was married to Finan McDonald, the first of the McDonald fur traders to come into the area, kind of a distant cousin of sorts of Angus McDonald, the more well-known one, who was the founder of Fort Kana here in the Mission Valley. But Richard, when Julia was a little girl, the three of them, mother, daughter, and husband, father, moved to the Missoula Valley in the, I think, I'm trying to remember, it's been a little while since I revisited this stuff, but late 1850s. And so very early on for non-Indian newcomers living in the Missoula Valley. And so Grant Creek came to be called Grant Creek because of Richard Grant, but he died shortly thereafter. Julia was maybe 11, I believe, 12, somewhere in there. And shortly thereafter, we have on the sign the word married in quotation marks, because when she was married to Christopher Higgins, she was 13. He was in his early 30s. Creepy. Let's be honest. I mean, it makes me think of Dave Walter's wonderful sessions at the Montana Historical Society years ago called Speaking Ill of the Dead. But be that as it may, Higgins and Worden had founded the Hellgate Trading Post out near what's now called the Y. It was a seedy, violent, awful little place. And after 4 years, they picked it up and relocated the operation to the confluence of Rattlesnake Creek and the Clark Fork River. And they thought, well, what name could we come up with other than Hellgate? There aren't a whole lot of people going to be attracted to living in a place called Hellgate. And it was Julia who took the ancient Salish place name for what in English for a while was called the Middle Clark Fork River, or the Missoula River, and that place name is in Missoula, or in the long form in Missoula. And it's actually a name rooted in creation stories and the coyote stories, a story that unfolded down near what's now Superior, a place in Salish called Spaudle, meaning burned ground. And so she took in Mesudle, lopped the N off the beginning of it, which leaves you with Mesudle, and then she and Higgins anglicized it to Missoula. And so it's a good story to get into our public spaces. A little reminder that even the name we use 1,000 times a day has its origins in an indigenous woman. And, you know, we don't know really that much about her whole story. I'm kind of waiting for somebody to dig into that more. There's a project for an ambitious grad student out there, maybe. But anyway, it was a wonderful dedication. Dave and Juanita and Commissioner Slotnick were all there, as were the members of the Grant Creek Trails Association. And importantly for us, many of the elders came out that day to offer prayers for these signs, prayers for us gaining mutual understanding and respect for each other's histories. So it's a great little spot. It's right by the where Glen Eagle Way comes into Grant Creek Road, right across from that T. So next time you're up that way, or make a special trip and go up that way, it's well worth it. I'll stop there, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks, Thompson. That's great. Appreciate the update. Any questions or comments for Thompson? And Thompson, give our regards to Sadie.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, let's see. Why don't we go to turn to the Forest Service? We've got at least a couple folks. Justin or Sydney, anything that you want to add that's going on in your world?
Well, sure, I'll jump in there first, and then because mine's short and brief, especially to follow something like that up. That's awesome. I love the little tidbit of history on that. But for myself right now for the forest, we are starting, well, not starting, I guess we are in deep in forest plan revision for the Lolo National Forest. And so that is what I am consuming my days with at this point. And with that, I can kick it over to Sid because she has much cooler things to talk about.
Hello, everyone. We are fast and furious in Let's Talk to Kids About Archaeology season. And it's my favorite, one of my favorite parts of my job. We spent Friday up in the Flathead at their Family Forestry Expo, which is a well-oiled machine. And then we're prepping for Forest Discovery Days here at Patty Canyon for 5th graders coming up on the 23rd. And then another thing that's going on starting today is my former boss and mentor, Milo McLeod, has been leading the Friends of Upper Rock Creek work party. This is the 14th year now in a row. These folks are given 1 year, for what, but they are working on the 3 historic properties and 2 cabin rentals up at about 30 miles up Rock Creek, Morgan Case Homestead, Hogback Homestead, and then the National Register listed Rock Creek cabin. And then they are also working on a project outside of the forest right there at the confluence of Rock Creek and the Clark Fork River up at Pete's Cabin, which I know some of you are very familiar with. So we're looking forward to visiting them this week and hoping that it won't snow on them. And I think that's about it for Lolo Heritage.
Great, thank you. Those rental cabins are awesome places to stay if you've not done so. And difficult to book, as it turns out. Any questions for either Justin or Sydney? Okay, Paul Filicetti, I see you joined us here. You want to introduce yourself and anything that you want to share on behalf of, I guess, Historic Preservation Commission is where you were, among other things, involved?
Sure. Thank you very much, Dave. I'm Paul Filicetti, Historic Preservation Architect. I work with A&E Design here in Missoula. I'm also on the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm the chair of the HPC this year, and I'm on the Missoula City Cemetery Board. Just to talk a little bit about what's going on at the Historic Preservation Commission. It's Historic Preservation Month in May. So there's a whole list of activities that are going on today. Today's activity is a open house and tour at the Lalonde Ranch from 4 to 6 p.m. So I think there'll be a few of you out there as well. I'll be out there as well. Aside from that, last week we gave out Historic Preservation Awards. There were 7 awards that were given out, with the theme being people saving places as a focus. We gave an award to Bob Oakes and Alan Newell. And then the Moon Randolph Homestead had an award as a cultural landscape. Compatible new addition was Radius Gallery in Higgins downtown. Adaptive reuse was a Relic Gallery, which is just north of Radius. Exterior Restoration Project Award went to St. Xavier Church, St. Francis Xavier Church. And then a residential restoration went to a private residence at 226 6th Street East, which was a pretty cool project. The architect went into the files, grabbed A.J. Gibson Design House, used A.J. Gibson's original drawings and resubmitted them to the city of Missoula for a building permit, and received a permit application on that, using Gibson's original drawings to do some work on the house. So just a pretty cool little story there.
In a timely manner.
Yes.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm sure you've heard about the post hospital and the permits that came through to the commission for review for the demolition of a CCC building and significant renovation of the post hospital in conjunction with some development properties out there. Both of those permit applications were voted down. One voted in a positive way down and the other in a negative way down, but they were both rejected by the Historic Preservation Commission, and they will be going on to City Council for final review within the next 30 days or so. Out of the city cemetery, I can talk just a little bit about that. The City Cemetery Board voted a couple of months ago to demolish the existing office building. And so plans are in the works for a new building out at the cemetery. Just so you know, the Historic Preservation Commission is opposed to demolishing the building, and it's kind of made a public statement about that. But the City Cemetery Board has decided to proceed with recommendation to City Council, and budgeting is proceeding with that for the for fiscal year 2024. So that's my update.
Thanks, Paul. Any questions or comments for Paul? Okay. Sierra, that was a thumbs up from Thomas. Okay. Sierra, anything noteworthy from DNRC?
Thanks, Dave. We really don't have too much. This is my first time attending this meeting, so it's great to hear from everyone. And thanks, Matt, for mentioning the barracks from DNRC. I had honestly forgotten about that. I will just mention 2 things, I guess. When I stepped into this position, I filled the position of a gentleman named Bob Storer, who had actually been in this office for 47 years. And so there was quite a bit of historical documents in his office alone, and just 2 things to note that might be of interest. At least I thought they were interesting. Rifling through paperwork, I found an old annual report that had pictures of DNRC's office. It used to be housed up at the Lincoln School up at the Rattlesnake back in the 60s, which I thought was somewhat interesting, especially for me, since that's where my grandmother attended grade school. And then the other piece of historical information that I found that I actually submitted to the Montana Historical Society was some old diaries from one of our service foresters in the 40s. So he kept a daily diary of everything he did for roughly 10 years. It's mostly stories of getting stuck in the woods and his car breaking down, but it's actually pretty interesting. And so I didn't read all of them because it was a huge box tucked away in an attic that I found. But it is pretty interesting. Lots of details about the Blackfoot River and his work along there. So that is going to be at the Historical Society. And I'm not sure if they'll transcribe them or what they'll end up doing with it, but kind of interesting things to find in a office after 47 years of the same person being here. But that's all I have really. I appreciate listening in to everyone else and happy to answer any questions if anyone has questions for DNRC.
Hey, Sierra, any questions for Sierra and DNRC? Right, that's pretty fascinating about Lincoln School. I had no idea that DNRC might have had a presence up there at one point in time. Okay, who else are we missing online? I see Nathan out there.
Yeah, how's it going, guys?
Hi.
Got a couple projects that we're working on. One of them is our downtown parks interpretive plan. So not surprising, we have requests from everyone to put interpretive signs in one of our most visited parks, Caras Park. And so
Nathan, would you mind introducing yourself to folks?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Sorry, guys. I'm Nathan McLeod, landscape architect with the City of Missoula Parks and Recreation. So we're looking at the downtown parks interpretive plan. We get a lot of requests for interpreting various things from, history to stormwater facilities to just all kinds of different celebrations in Caras Park. And so we're trying to figure out, we don't want to just have a park that is overwhelming for visitors in terms of interpretation. So we are working with the Missoula Downtown Association on trying to get a plan. It won't actually include specifics of like the design of the signage, but it will include what kinds of themes that we want to interpret in the downtown parks. Another couple projects we are also doing an interpretive plan for our conservation lands trailheads and our primary commuter trails. Similar kind of thing. We have a lot of different things that we could interpret, but we're trying to figure out what are the highest priorities for interpreting history, culture, environmental, education, all of those kinds of things. A cool project that came to us recently that I learned about was interpreting Chinese history in Missoula. And specifically, there was an old cemetery in the Lower Rattlesnake. And so we're trying to find a location for some signage to interpret that. I don't know exactly where that cemetery actually is. We're still trying to figure some of that stuff out, but finding a location that will be visible for folks that are walking around or visiting our trailheads would be kind of a neat project. And we've been working on the Rattlesnake Dam interpretive plan. That's also kind of part of that conservation lands interpretive plan. We've been working with the tribes and Missoula Water on that one. And then I just wanted to note that we don't really have funding for any of these projects, at least implementing them. We do have funding for the planning, but it's something that we are always trying to leverage partnerships to actually get the physical signs put in place. That's it.
That's great. Any questions for Nathan?
I have a comment.
Yeah, Sally.
Nathan, I'm Sally Thompson. Nice to meet you. On the 1884 bird's eye map, you can get high quality res from the Library of Congress and zoom in at Cherry Street at the base of Jumbo, and that cemetery's mapped pretty much on there. It shows the fence and the gravestones.
Oh, that's great. I'll look at that. Thank you.
Okay. That is exactly why we meet as a roundtable, to learn things such as that. I can't watch it.
Well, I just wanted to add, I'm involved with a lot of what Nathan's working on. I'm on the committee, North Riverside Parks and Trails Committee, and it's it's a monster to deal with, because as he said, there's so many people that want something in Karis Park. I'm steadfast in defending the 4 signs that were there, put up there 15 years ago, that are now down, and we could go back at some point. We're wrestling with that, so there's a lot going on, and so it's really important to have this roundtable. Find out who else is interested in what's going on and try to figure out those priorities.
Thanks, Ken. And speaking of Karis Park, some of you, probably very few of you know, but some of you might know Thompson. We are working with CSKT Councilman Martin Charlo on initial planning for a powwow on Indigenous Peoples Day in Karis Park later this year. This would be similar to and the second of such events as this. We had the first event in this vein last year on Indigenous Peoples Day, when we had a great celebration of and dedication of Bear Tracks Bridge. So more to come on that. Any other questions or comments for Nathan? All right, is there anyone else online who I missed? Let's go here to the room. How about Sharon? What's happening in the Swan?
Well, we're really excited about our August 13th event. Last year, we were able to procure a beautiful teepee and a buffalo robe, and we have a lot of Indigenous peoples artifacts. And on the 13th of August, some of the elders from the Flathead are planning to come over, and we will dedicate our site that is, it's strictly dedicated to the history of the people from the Flathead who would come over to hunt and to pick the camas and do other sustainable activities within the valley. So that's all coming together as far as we know. It's still kind of in the planning a little bit, but we hope everybody will kind of put it on your calendar and come up, see our museum, and join with us in the celebration of introducing that culture into the history of the culture into the valley. That's pretty much it. We open on Memorial Day and look forward to a lot of visitors.
Fantastic. Any questions for Sharon? And the August date again?
13th.
August 13th. Okay. And so folks, just so that you know, following this meeting, as with the previous roundtables, we'll get out an email message to all of the attendees and those who weren't able to make it, and let you know some of the important tidbits that we discussed, such as August 13th.
Right. I should actually add too that you can follow it on the website, swanvalleyhistoricalsociety.org.
Yeah. Sally, is there anything you'd like to share? No pressure whatsoever.
Like that you already talked about the Lower Rattlesnake.
No, I haven't.
Should I just
Yeah, go
read
for
it? Well, Matt, thank you for the funding for to create a script for a Lower Rattlesnake history tour that'll become integrated with Unseen Missoula and through the Rattlesnake Creek Watershed Group and the Montana Natural History Center. And we're just bringing it. We've done a test round and we're just finalizing the script, and that should be available next month for anybody who wants to take a tour of the Lower Rattlesnake. I learned so much myself. I already thought I knew so much, but especially about doing real in-depth research on Greenham Park and its rich history and part of this valley. So it should be fun. Thanks again.
Thank you. Yeah, anything you want?
I'm loath to kind of bring this up, but I will drop it in place and we can move on after I've said it. For years, as Dave knows, I'm a rail buff as well as a historian and a landscape architect and all that. But I realized shortly after moving back to Montana that Missoula being a key location along the old Northern Pacific Main Line, there is no public street in Missoula that's named after the railroad that basically formed the basis for, a lot of what is now modern Missoula. We have Union Pacific Street, we have Great Northern Way, etc. Neither railroad reached Missoula. They're key in the history of Montana, yes, very much so. But there's no public street in the city of Missoula named Northern Pacific Avenue or street or court or anything else. So I just dropped that out there and you know, Kim Riggman and I talked about this years ago. And he's like, yeah, that's something we ought to work on. And too many other priorities out there, but I just got frustrated that I had the good fortune of growing up next to the end of the Yellowstone Park line in Gardner. I went to Gardner High School for my first 2 years from living in the park. And I had the thrill of being able to ride in the cab of a Mikado steam locomotive around the loop, probably in 1952 or 3, I don't know. At that time, of course, OSHA and others didn't have any kind of control or concern about safety. And so the engineer invited me up to the cab. We rode the loop around the Gardner Loop there, and watched all switching operations in the freight yard, and it was a kind of a meaningful thing to me. So I have obviously a soft spot in my heart for the Northern Pacific Railroad, and I think it would be nice to have the city come around to recognizing it more than it has so far. There's the locomotive, there's signage here and there, but if someone looks on a street map, they, oh, I guess the Northern Pacific didn't come here or something. Anyway, thank you for letting me know about the heritage meeting today, Dave. I really appreciate it. Dave called me last evening to tell me about the whole Hans thing, and so I'm just delighted to be here. So much of what's been talked about, I have some involvement with the Morgan Case homestead. I worked on that years ago. So it's a delight to hear about that and all these other things going on. So thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thanks, Ken. What about railroad over here? Just renaming it Northern Pacific.
Yeah,
Railroad.
I know. That was the obvious one for me.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk more offline about that one. Anything else from anyone? Did I miss anyone or anything else that has jogged people's thinking that you'd like to bring up?
Also,
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight some of the work that public history students have done and are doing in the university. They worked as part of an environmental history class, worked on archiving a huge set of photos that were donated to the Montana Natural History Center by a biologist whose name I think is Bill Grady. And just thousands and thousands of slides that they helped go through, and that will now they, you know, get probably thousands of dollars of work for free for the Montana Natural History Center. And those images will now be available for them to use in exhibits and that sort of thing. So they had a great presentation on that at the Montana Natural History Center just last week. And then as part of Historic Preservation Month, one of my former students, Aiden Courtney, is going to be giving a presentation at Imagination Brewery about the history of brewing in Missoula, Garden City Brewery. That'll be on May 21st at 6 p.m. So if anybody's interested in the history of brewing and wants to drink beer,
Man, that is one I don't want to miss. I like that. Thompson Smith. And you're muted, Thompson.
There we go. So hi, Kent. We've been friends since working together way back on the Highway 93 issue, and I would just offer to you, since history is always a matter of debate and not necessarily unanimity, that from the CSKT perspective, naming something after the Northern Pacific Railroad might fall into the same category as all the other names that until Bear Tracks Bridge was renamed have covered the city already. That is, names that are in a sense celebratory of dispossession and of invasion. I mean, the documents surrounding the Northern Pacific Railroad are some of the most amazing, rich, and in some ways appalling documents that I've come across in this historic research. So I would offer that naming stuff after the Northern Pacific Railroad, and I'll leave aside the question of naming stuff after the union, the railroad unions. Maybe that would be a different category. But naming stuff after the company might be akin to renaming streets up this way after the Montana Department of Transportation. I'm not sure it would fly too well.
Okay.
I offer that in a spirit of collegial debate.
Okay, thanks, Thompson. That is a good counterpoint. We appreciate that. And I don't think there will be any MDT streets in Missoula anytime soon either, so.
Well, let me just throw in one of those documents, which just astounded me when I dug it up way back during grad school when I was in the National Archives. And when the Missoula business community got word, this is in the spring of 1882, they got word that the Assistant Attorney General of the United States would be traveling to the Flathead Reservation to negotiate the right-of-way for the railroad through the reservation. You know, and we should put negotiate in gigantic quotation marks. We can go into that another time, but I just want to mention this letter that's signed by almost every street name you see today in Missoula. McCormick and, you know, on and on and on, Warden, Higgins. And the letter says, we hear that the Justice Department is arriving to negotiate the right-of-way for the railroad through the reservation. We think that now would be an excellent time to move the tribes off of the Flathead Reservation altogether. And that it is our understanding that they'll be fine with that. You know, move them north near the Canadian boundary. It's just an incredible letter. I'll share a PDF of it with the group after we're done. But it's illuminating. I'll stop. Thanks.
Thanks, Thompson. Appreciate that. Any other comments from anyone? So I would encourage all of you, if there are folks who are not at the table today, who you think should be, or who you think would be interested in attending these, please shoot their names and contact information to either Kyle or myself. They may already be on our distribution list, but just couldn't make it today, but please let us know. We want to be as inclusive of folks who would find this of value and interest as possible. Like I mentioned, is it correct, Kyla? We will follow up with a message to everyone with kind of a synopsis of what went on, and we are recording this, so presumably the recording will be available.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah, I'll distribute the recording link as well as any information shared here as a follow-up email.
Okay, and just as a reminder, today, 4 p.m. Lalonde Ranch, and as I also might have mentioned, it is strategically located by Big Sky Brewery. And actually, there is another brewery. What's the name of it? Just to the west of.
Closed.
They're closed.
So there's still, so the owners of that one bought Imagination.
Yes.
And they're still brewing at a location, but it's no longer a tap room.
Okay, well, Big Sky Brewing Tap Room is open, and after touring a historic site for a couple hours, I'm sure you will have worked up a thirst. So you can join us at Big Sky Brewing at 6 p.m. once the event is over.
Or the Highlander, which is down the street a little bit further.
Yeah, you could make it there too. All right, well, thanks everyone. We really appreciate you joining us, and hopefully you can make it in person in the future. This is a great venue. You can overlook both the physical and cultural landscape of the Missoula Valley from here. So way better than in the Missoula County Courthouse, as much as I like that historic facility. So have a great day and great summer. We'll reconvene in the fall.
Thank you, Dave.